Live. Start recording button. Why is my live a black screen? Hey, there we go. Okay. I just need to find the speakers I want to talk about. They might be under packages. Okay, so today I want to talk about a few things. One of which being some speakers that I recently got in and then proceeded to send back. Not necessarily through faults of their own, but we'll get into that. As well as just some general like subwoofer basics and speaker placement stuff. Trying this with my webcam rather than my fancy SLR camera to see if it is sufficient. So if this stream doesn't look as good as some of my previous ones, that's why. But let's get into it. So the Soundtown Carpo V4. Now they make a few different. That bird is going to be the death of me. Okay. Okay, the Soundtown Carpo V4. They make a few different variations in this line, and by they, I mean whoever makes these speakers. I don't know if Soundtown manufactures them themselves or if they get them through an OEM, because Gemini used to make I don't know if they still make this, but that's pretty darn familiar. And spec for spec, I'm pretty sure they are identical, but it is hard to tell. Like they're claiming 600 watt RMS from Gemini. Soundtown over here is claiming, it's 600 RMS for the whole system. And never mind. Okay, that makes more sense. I'm like, wait, RMS? What? Do you remember when they used to do this? When they used to give us our RMS numbers? Yeah. Gemini still actually does. You just have to go to either the website or the manual for it. But they, like everybody else, advertise peak because companies do that now. Anyway, so these are either a redesign or a rebadge of those or from the same OEM. I don't know. What the heck are they? Well, I like this concept. They are a 4-inch woofer array. Now they've got 4 tweeters in there too. They are like I think they're just standard. I don't even know what they officially call them on here. They say they're compression drivers. They sounded very how do I put it? Piezo. So there's a good chance they are actually putting compression drivers as the tweeters. At this wattage, piezo might have actually sounded better, especially because there's no horn around it to focus the sound the way you want it. So anyway, I bought a set of these. As you can see, they are on sale for $149.99. I think at that price for a pair of passive speakers, that's fine. I think they're right about where they need to be. I would never pay the $299 regular price for them. I think there's a lot better options out there. But let's talk about my experience with them. So, like I said, I did find the tweeters on these did not sound the best, but at the price, it was fine. Now, I live in Canada, so I can't get them for this regular rate here, which is really unfortunate because, again, I think they are not too bad of a deal at the $149.99. But Amazon had an open box deal. Now, normally open box probably fine, but mine showed up. Both speakers had cracks in them. Some of the hardware was missing, and the well, it doesn't matter which side. One of them was blown. It took me a bit to realize what the heck was going on because I opened them up. I'm like, why do these sound this horrendous? And then I plugged the other one in. Okay, this one sounds way better. Oh, it's not clipping somewhere. There's something blown in the speakers. So took a little check-in, and yeah, sure enough, one of mine's toast. So I sent them back. So I did not get a chance to test them as much as I would like. So consider this more of a preliminary overview, not a full review. What I can say, for speech, they sounded actually really good. If you just need a set of fairly light, like they're heavier than you think they would be for being plastic enclosured speakers. They tell you the weight here. Product weight, yeah, 10 pounds each. Package weight 35 because it has all the stands and junk in there. 10, almost 11 pounds each. You wouldn't expect that for how big they are. They actually have a decent weight to them. But I was hoping that weight was going to translate into a bit better sound quality. As they say here, 80 to 200 hertz for frequency response. I have a strong suspicion that this should say frequency range, which they don't tell us. Now, I didn't have my RTA mic set up, so I can't actually test this number. Oh, I need to make sure you can see that number. Good. I didn't actually get a chance to test the frequency response in a way that I would like. All I had at my disposal at the time was a 12-inch speaker that I turned a high-pass filter up until I made the other speaker sound the same as this, and I had to turn it up quite a ways. So if you're getting these for music playback in any way, you need a subwoofer. It's not a case of, oh, sometimes, I use an 8-inch and I get away just fine without a sub for like cocktail music or something like that. I wouldn't play any music through these without a subwoofer. For voice, I usually do an 80 hertz high pass filter anyway. So for voice, these sounded just fine. But running full range into them, there were just no lows present. If I played these with a sub, I'd probably do the column array thing of upping the subwoofer to like 200. So to me, a good pairing for these would be one or two 12-inch subwoofers. I don't know if I would do a 15 or an 18 because you're going to want some of your low mids, high bass, that kind of range coming through them. So I would stick to that, which kind of makes sense because a lot of the subwoofers and a lot of the amplifiers, or like plate amplifiers that Soundtown sells, they go up to about 180 or something like that on their crossovers and filtering and stuff. So I think that's pretty much where we kind of want it. Like I said, so sound-wise, they definitely lack in the lows. You should expect that just looking at these, though, right? They're 4-inch woofers and whatnot. They are passive at 4 ohms. So if you run them off of a fairly inexpensive amplifier, you should be able to pump a lot of power into them. But be careful if you want to run 2 of them off of 1/2 of an amplifier. So like I've got a Behringer amp kicking about that has the switches on it to go like this half does 100 hertz and above. This does 100 hertz below. So you can cross over your, like, and power, your tops and a sub off of the same amplifier. That amplifier would burn itself out, because running two of these in parallel would do a 2 ohm load. So it's nice to have 4 ohms in some situations, so depending on what you have, but just be cautious of that. Now, I was running 200 watts into them. They have a power handling, and I actually do believe this number here, 125 watt RMS with a 500 watt peak. That actually makes perfect sense, because usually your program, that's absent from the center here, usually for program you would run double-ish your RMS, and then double that would be your peak. So double this to 250 and then peak at 5. Those numbers actually make sense, which is nice, because one of the things about SoundTown is I've never seen or heard any of their speakers until I tried these ones. I see some reviews for some of their systems and stuff, mostly used by DJs, which I do DJ, but my background is more sound technician, right? Doing audio for bands and things like that. And yeah, I wouldn't, again, don't use this for, say, acoustic guitar and vocals unless you have a subwoofer. For just vocals, it'd probably actually do a pretty good job, but you're going to be feeling a lack in the, some of the undertones and stuff. But anyway, going back to the spec sheet, yeah, I think this is probably about right. I think somebody before me probably tried to pump 500 watts aside into it, because at 4 ohms, that's actually easier to do than you would think. Even some inexpensive amplifiers can pump out a hefty amount of power at 4 ohms. I was running them at 200. Again, the one that was blown, that's not really SoundTown's fault. So I'm just going to talk about the one that actually sounded correct. I was getting a decent amount of volume. Now, on that note, 96 dB, 120 or 96 dB sensitivity with 120 dB maximum SPL. That actually adds up pretty well, if my memory serves. SPL calculator. I never do this the manual way because I live in the real world and can use a calculator whenever I want. Sorry, math teachers. So, assuming 1 meter away from walls. So, at their RMS, you should be able to get about 117 out of it, and the 500 that they've got, like this actually is low. You can, in theory, run this probably continually at about 120 dB output per speaker. If this 96 sensitivity is accurate, which I do believe it is, right? So if I pump in 250, hey, look, 120. All right. So they're not fudging their math, which is really nice to see from a, budget-oriented speaker company. That's something they tend to do. It's just really nice to see. Again, I'm not 100% sold on their frequency response. I think this might be 80 hertz at -10 and caps out probably closer to 100, maybe 120 hertz for -3. But these are designed for either voice or running with a subwoofer. I wouldn't do any music playback with that one. But back to the tour here. So I do also largely believe this 96 sensitivity. The reason being, I ran it side by side with a 12-inch speaker that had 96 dB from a more well-known company. Panned left and right, and I got the same volume. Now, I was just using a cell phone dB meter. I now have a real one over at the shop for future speaker testing, because I realized partway through getting ready with these ones that I wasn't happy with how inaccurate that often can be. But the fact that I was getting roughly the same decibel output from other speakers that have the exact same sensitivity rating tells me this number is likely accurate. So you can actually get 120 decibels out of these. It will start to sound harsh as you move up to that range. Like I said, I was running 200 watts. It did start like it does the classic speaker thing where it sounds better, it's better, worse, horrid, right? So you want to be careful how hard you push it. But yeah, this actually isn't a made up number, which is nice to see. Um, yeah. Now, overall impressions though, uh, these stands are a joke. It is nice how compact they are, but I'm like 6 foot tall, and like my head was like here on these speakers, kind of thing. Like they're short. These speaker stands, you'll end up replacing them right away. Mine was missing the brackets, which is too bad because I do like this idea. If you have, say, a subwoofer on your stage, or like hidden underneath it or beside it or something like that, and then you hang two of these from the wall, or if you needed, really light music playback or public address of, hey, we just need some speakers. We don't want to do in wall, but we can bolt to the wall to talk into. The brackets, I think, would work really well. The construction on these is a mixed bag. Again, mine came out of the box with cracks down here around the bottom. It's moving the speaker rather than my mouse, so it's kind of moving both. But from some type of impact around the corners. So that tells me the plastic, it's hard to say how durable it actually is, but the fact that an open box model came with both speakers cracked in the same spot, not ideal. I tried to take the front grill off to see what drivers were inside. I couldn't get it off. I think it is both press fit in there and then screwed in, so it's a bit tricky to pull the thing out. But fit and finish wise, it actually did look really cool. My plan was to take two of these and run a subwoofer underneath them on each side and basically make an inexpensive column array where I got to pick what subwoofer I used, and I got to pick, my frequencies of where they go, etc. So that fell through a bit. I think they would work for that goal, but as standalone speakers, this is only for very light playback and some speech. So that's not how I would do it. But going to the back panel here, so they do have a speak on, which is good. They only have one, so they're not set up for parallel wiring, which is unfortunate in some respects, but at the same time, the fact that they're 4-ohm speakers, I wouldn't have ran them in parallel because most modern amps can't handle 2-ohm, at least most budget-friendly amps, I should say. So the QSC Crown, they still make 2-ohm friendly amplifiers. Same thing with Ashley, and there was another, I can't remember the third one. I've dealt with a few companies as of late that do have some better amplifiers for running at 2 ohms, but I digress. I can't remember if mine had the speak-on cables in the box, but they're fairly short. Speak-on cables, it's nice to have a longer one. But yeah, that's kind of my summary of these. Would I recommend them? If you're going to run them with a subwoofer, yes. If you're not going to run them with a subwoofer, largely ignore these speakers for music playback. They would only at that point be useful. And as they kind of advertise right here, in say an office setting or a restaurant where we want some speakers to be able to talk to people, they have pretty good dispersion, right? So bolt a few of these to the wall and you can fill a room pretty easy. You're just not going to have a lot of bass frequencies there. So if you have a way of adding bass to the room, a couple of these bolted to the wall can sound pretty good. Entry-level DJ stuff, it might suffice with a subwoofer because, again, that subwoofer is taking a lot of the duties away from these tops. and lets you push probably a bit closer to this 120 dB coming out of these, which we're going to talk about later, is a lot. Like you can get away with a lot of stuff with 120 decibels. Yeah, so like I said, they sound pretty good for the money. You have to qualify it with that. I wouldn't pay. We will fulfill the item as soon as it becomes available. Oh, so they're sold out right now. I wouldn't pay the 300, but at 150, yeah, that's pretty good. Oh yeah, look up there, 9-foot speak-on cables. That's horrendous. 9-foot speaker cables. What do you? I usually have my speakers in the air at least 6 feet, which you can't do with these with these speakers. So this 9-foot cable they come with is only useful if you have a subwoofer underneath them that has a speak-on out to power a satellite. Other than that, like that cable near useless. I don't even know if mine came with it, but I just distinctly remember seeing that previously and knowing like, oh, that's pretty short. Yeah, overall, like I said, $150. You could do far worse. And if you're looking to build your own column arrays kind of thing, and you're gonna put a subwoofer under them, these would do you just fine. They look good. They have that column array top kind of look going. There are like I've been interested in one from PowerWorks. That loading. Yeah, I know it's new. Yeah, their Power Array 2, for example. I've been looking into something like this, and this is basically like a prefab version of what I was looking to build. So if you're thinking about building something along those lines, you could probably make something using these. But yeah, I would try to find a situation where you can listen to them first, because the audio quality was good. It's what I would expect at $150 with a pretty decent volume output, but I didn't have a... I would, if you don't have subs, I would just get a inexpensive point source with like a 12-inch in it. I think you can do better, especially on the used market. Like I bought a couple. It's not Impulse. Wharfdale. It's not the Typhon, because that's what I've got coming in. Wasn't Impact. I can't even remember now. But I picked up a set of Wharfdale speakers for like $80 that trounce these. But that's on the used market, which you do have to consider. So, yeah, that was a long-winded kind of talk about the Carpo V4. Recommended for speech, not recommended for DJing or live sound for musicians unless you have a subwoofer. Long story short, they're not lying on their numbers, which is nice. High frequencies sound a little harsh, but you should kind of expect that at this price range. Sad to say. And just know your ohms and what your amplifiers are capable of, because you will make these explode or burn out your amp if you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Stop recording. All right. Now, I also want to take a look at something else here. Get into some speaker placement. All right, so this is Focus 3 from Ease. EASE. Great software. It's free. I highly recommend it, especially if you are getting into sound, be it live sound reinforcement or DJing. And I'm mostly going to be talking about this from a DJ perspective today, because I've been noticing a lot of the same issues popping up with DJs that I don't see as often for live sound techs, because I think think the mentalities are a bit different. Back in the day, right? If you watch some of I think Dave Rat had some good videos about like column or line arrays versus point source, and why with the new line array technology they have, they can really do a really good sound at festivals, regardless of what type of band, or if it's EDM or if it's a rap or whatever. They can really get the sound exactly where they want it now, because when it comes to point source speakers, because they're throwing the sound everywhere, you tend to get more comb filtering the more speakers you put next to each other. So every time you double your sound source, you don't double your volume, you add 3 decibels. So let's demonstrate that a bit in here, right? So we're going to make a new listening area. Now, first thing I want to actually check, let's go with a basketball court dimensions. Reason being, this is going to be your standard gymnasium, and it is going to be bigger than a lot of, say, ballrooms. So we've got, oh, it's in meters? Oh, it's like they know I'm Canadian. I want feet, though. Come on. One of these has to be in imperial. Here we go. What is a standard? Oh, why don't I just click here? 94 by 50. All right. We have our numbers. So we're going to select this. We're going to do 94 by 50. Well, bam. There's our listening area. Baseball or basketball court is like a really good place to start with this kind of stuff, like I said, because that is a gymnasium, and a ballroom is likely going to be smaller than it. And on top of that, a ballroom, likely you're going to have a dance floor near the front as opposed to all the way at the back. So it's overkill for most people, and it's exactly what you need to know about if you're, say, doing a school gym. Now, let's add some speakers. So I right-click. Now, I've added a few sound sources to this. In particular, I've got some QSC stuff on here because they are fairly standard when it comes to, say, a DJ. Add. So now I have a sound source. Now, assuming, let's zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to move this in a few feet so that we're not directly against the quote-unquote wall. Now, this right now does not account for having a wall. Now, you can see the red area right around the speaker is getting 105 dB, and then orange is getting, oh, you actually can't see that. I'll move me up top. Hey, because this rigging thing, you don't need to see as much. I'm also going to make me a bit smaller. Oop. All right. And yeah, so you can see down here in the bottom, we have our average, 97.4. We've got our standard plus standard deviation minus standard deviation. So this is handy here because it tells us a bit more accurately what our maxes and minimums and stuff are. So in this room with one speaker, we're looking at 105 dB. Now, if you're, say, running more gain than that, you can go in here and you can gain this up by 20. So now we see, okay, by gaining it up, we see basically the same ratios on everything, but we've increased our volume by twofold. So let's stick to those numbers. Now, I want to copy, and we're going to paste. The reason I did copy paste is now this second speaker that we're adding has that same 20 dB gain. So I add a second speaker. Well, this number's down at the bottom, didn't change all that much. right? Right. So we've got average of 117. I paste that speaker back in. Ooh, where's my plane here? Average 120, 123. So it's actually a pretty decent bump adding one extra speaker. Now, in this giant space, we'd probably, our initial thoughts would be, let's space things out. Oh, and it's showing me I want broadband. Oh, I have to start over. No wonder that numbers were out of whack. All right, delete. Starting from scratch. So this is Ease Focus 3. Get it. It's free. It's a good program. And you want it. Trust me. I screwed up on a setting. So we're starting over. But what you see here, this is a 94 by 50 foot basketball court. Now, the reason I'm with the basketball court is if you're a DJ, say, doing a school dance, a basketball court is probably the area you're going to be dealing with. And if you're a DJ doing, say, a ballroom, it's likely going to be smaller. It's not always, but likely. So I've got this single speaker here. This is a QSC KW122. So a 12-inch. It's very similar to the just the regular K, but I think it's a wooden enclosure. It's just the one I could find, right? Because if you get Ease Focus 3, you can download a pack of pack of speakers to add to it. When you first do it, if you go add sound source, it only comes with a couple of the demo stuff from this. So two-way speaker, dual 18, line array stuff. I just put these in because then it lets me experiment. Most manufacturers let you do or let you find the files you need to run in softwares like this so you can experiment with your own speakers. Now, I gained this up by 20. So now our max SPL in this room is about 129. Believe when you get rid of, when you add the standard deviation, max 128.9. Yeah, so that's the number we're going to go with. We're sitting about 120, 129 in here. That's one speaker. Now, paste, add a second one, and things don't go up as much as you would expect. Now, our maximum did go up, but our averages stayed relatively the same, right? So let's control Z that in a second. So 128, 123, right? So our average goes up a bit. Our max doesn't go up too much, right? So, oops, no, paste. Yeah, so the average goes up because now we can space these more, right? Now zoom in a bit. It grids it out nicely, so I can space these speakers out. I doubt you would ever go too much further than this, right? So average 126. Now, if I add more speakers to this, and we just line them up all across the front, which is something I've seen a lot of DJs do, where they'll put like their other speakers here and here. Like it helps. I gotta zoom in a bit. Let's get these guys directly next to each other. Like it has increased the max, but like our average hasn't gone up probably as far as a lot of people would hope with how expensive it is to double this stuff. Now we can space these out. That's something a lot of DJs and sound techs do. Now this works, but again, the average didn't actually change too much. It did drop some of the who's getting like the least, right? So, right, that dark blue there, that number we want to pay attention to, because if we space these out, now a lot more people are getting a higher SPL. Even though our general average didn't change, we've moved it more to like we want as many things close to kind of that green as we can. Now, the other thing we can do, which can often be more effective when you're dealing with stuff like this, space these out, and then this one horizontal, let's go 45. Or do I need, oh, got that backwards. All right, that one can go down here. Horizontal, negative 45. So now you'll notice that the dark blue went up, but it is now 126, right? So we're actually getting closer and closer to kind of what we want. I move these forward a bit. Right? We're getting averages going up by moving these things forward. Now you would want to time align them and stuff. But again, if we start with these 4 speakers, average 130 with 135 as our kind of max, delete, delete, average 126. So by running a whole bunch of extra cabling, adding a bunch of speakers and stuff, we're not changing things by all that much compared to oh, did I hit a wrong button? Let's gain that up to 120 or to 25 there. I get the same results by making the front speakers a little bit louder. 125 dB versus the 100, although now we're pushing into the 138 at where they are crossing over. The advantage of going with less speakers, though, is when you have a whole bunch of point source speakers, you run into comb filtering. So as the frequencies on these speakers cross over each other, we run into some issues. So if I go, let's go 1 octave. Right, so this red area here at 2 kilohertz, they're crossing over in that space, which if you're running stereo shouldn't be too big of a problem. But if we add a whole bunch of speakers, we're running more and more into issues of potentially comb filtering, where our speaker cross in terms of the, like if you think of the sound almost like a beam of light, when they cross over, they do have phase cancellation because you're having the same sound coming from 2 different sources. And the more you have, the bigger risk you run of that. So generally speaking, when you're dealing with point source speakers, it's better and easier just to up the volume. The advantage of using multiple speakers, in my opinion, isn't to up the volume. It's that you can get a better average by spacing those speakers out and turning them down. That's like, I don't use more speakers for more volume generally. I use more speakers for better coverage at a lower volume, if that makes sense. I wouldn't recommend just, oh, we need it louder, add more, add more, add more, right? And again, we're looking in the higher hertz stuff. This works a lot differently when you're dealing with subwoofers, which we're going to get into right away here. YouTube land in a different video, though. Alrighty, let's set this up. So delete. We're going to be looking in the 63 hertz range, 1 octave. We're going to add audio source. Do I have any? Yeah, we're just going to use the stock subwoofer. I'm recording. Okay. So, if you watched my previous video on this stuff, pending I think it's worth editing and putting up, I think this is honestly going to be the more important one. To sum it up, I tend to think that when it comes to point source speakers, less is more. But what about subwoofers? So I've got a subwoofer here on essentially a few feet into a basketball court. Now, this is assuming an open wall behind it. Like there's, I don't know Ease Focus 3 enough to program in walls, or if it is even capable of dealing with that and the math involved. There are more ambitious programming softwares out there, I believe, but this one, it's free and it's very good for what it does. But there's some stuff that I just don't know how to do in it yet, or if it's capable of, and I just am unaware. But anyway, so we've got a subwoofer here, and as many know, subwoofers are omnidirectional, so you can watch this gradient here. The volume drops as you get to the back of the room. So we've got a 12 or so dB difference between the front of the room and the back of the room. And that isn't too bad because this is a massive space. The reason I went with the basketball court for the example is because in a school dance situation, that's probably something you're going to be dealing with. And in a regular like ballroom situation, they're probably going to be smaller. Not always, but probably. So it just seemed like a good space to deal with. Now, if we want more volume, we can turn the subwoofer up, right? I'm going to leave it on a stock setting here. So our max right now is, again, 108. Minimums are closer to 96. But looking over in the corner here, we can see our average is 101. So we have a 12 decibel difference. The people in the center of the room, in this green here, are hearing 102. So that is noticeably, if you're unfamiliar with how decibels work, that is noticeably quieter than 108. 6 dB is where we consider it to be a noticeable change. 3 is like you kind of notice it. 6 is you really notice it. 10 we perceive as double. So give or take the 2 decibels, the people at the back of the room are going to be hearing the volume at 2 decibels less than the people at the front of the room. Or sorry, half the volume, not 2 decibels. I just finished explaining how that works. So and that to me is enough, right? If somebody wants to stand at the very back of the room and the bass is half the volume for them, that's fine, given that almost everybody, if you had the entire gym packed, you're doing pretty good here. Now, there are some variables, especially when it comes to bass. Humans don't absorb as much as you think, so I wouldn't take that into account as much as some would say. High frequencies, on the other hand, they bounce off things really well, so having a bunch of people in between a speaker and a listener can reduce the volume. That's why you raise them up, so that the sound isn't trying to go through a swath of people. Anyway, so you could just turn the subwoofer up. That's 9 times out of 10 what you want to do. But I can also add another subwoofer. Now, we've got average 101. We're capping out at around 108. Now, when you double your sound source, oops, no, I can just paste. Come on. When you double your sound source, generally speaking, you should add 3 decibels. But we added 6. Oh, the point. When you have your speakers close enough to each other, you will get a coupling effect. In particular with your subs, I should say. I don't know the exact math and science behind it, but the bit of reading I've done tells me that if you keep your center of the cones about, I believe it was about 6 feet apart total, then you should still get a coupling effect, and you get an extra 3 dB of bass response. So by adding this, we have now the people at the back of the room are 102, where before, oops, 96. So yeah, we're getting extra 6 decibels just across the whole spectrum of bass, or whole spectrum of the room, I should say. Now, if I get that sub going again, now you do have a bit of range when it comes to spacing them out. So, that there is, how many feet does that equate to on this chart? Like 3 feet apart. Still the same numbers. Now, one of the mistakes a lot of people make. So, right, adding this second subwoofer, ooh, that's nice. Ah, it's clean. Oh, but you have to space them out, because if you don't space them out, then your average is going to go down, right? Our average right now is 107. Now, I'm going to spoil this. This doesn't work the way you think if you're new to this stuff. So we space these out like crazy. They're on the other side of the room, My average drops by spacing them out. Weird, right? That's because now we have what they call power alleys. The bass frequencies are canceling each other out in these big blue sections here. So we have now a lower average because we've lost that 3 dB gain, right? So our max now is 111. And we've added in more and more people to this drop in volume, right? So before, $114, 102, right? So with an average of 107, and everybody kind of in between. The majority of people are hearing between 105 and 111. As soon as it's Control Y for redo. Okay, I just need to remember that. Yeah, our average drops by 4 decibels. And we've added more people who are hearing less bass. So spacing your subs is not as advantageous as you may think. Not only do you lose the extra 3 dB from coupling by creating these power alleys, you now have sections that are hearing 93 compared to the 102 we had before as our lowest points, right? So these people at the back of the room, yeah, there's going to be some people in the middle that are now going to have a little bit of a better experience, but you're actually creating a worse environment. You're lowering your average volume across the room by not having your speakers close at the front. Now, again, let's say you've got a set of column arrays, right? These subs here, these are massive. These are beasts. Okay, so right, oh, that's moving the I'm moving the room. Control Z. Get that back to where it's supposed to be. Yeah, I want these to be 1 foot. So show mapping. Get rid of that for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 6 feet apart. So if you have, say, a 4-foot table in between, we're still getting that coupling effect at 63. Getting a little bit of power rallying at 125. That is, in my opinion, acceptable. So I would stick to your subwoofers at 6 feet apart, because now we're getting a difference of, we're ranging between 114 dB, 102. These numbers hold up if you crank up the gain on them. So like it'll basically take your minimum max and go like that. It doesn't, like change the ratio between the low and the high. It just ups it, right? We can actually demonstrate that. So if I type in 20 dB gain, and 20 dB gain, right? Everything 9 dB in between. Actually, I made it better. I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, so these, we're good. Now, if I go here and I move this a little bit further, so 2 feet away, move this one there. We start to see that alleying effect starting to happen, where it's just going to get worse and worse the further apart we put these. And then this blue number here starts going down. So even though you would think, right, it's a good assumption to make that spacing your subwoofers is going to give you a better sound, but it will actually hurt your system. If you can keep them within about 6 feet of each other, you're actually probably fine. Okay, so column array users rejoice, but be careful. Once you start going too far apart, you start to lose the positive effects and gain the negative effects. That's going to be the long and short of it. The best example of this, I love that it's one of the biggest names in this kind of stuff. DJ Bar, he puts his subwoofer at the center all the time. That's just how he does it, and it really works. That solves all of these issues instantly, keeping your subwoofers together. I believe he uses a dual 18 because, yeah, if you put these nice and close together, you just tend to get better results. Where, yeah, the back of the room, 9 dB difference. I can live with that, right? Yeah, again, just similar to when we had them at like 100 decibels or whatever. We're half the volume at the back of the room as we are at the front, but we don't have these weird alleys causing a bunch of issues, right? Now, if you don't believe the math going on here, another good resource for this is good old-fashioned JBL. Now, I was looking at these speakers for some stuff. I went a different route. Not that the JBLs wouldn't have done the job, but I just went for some 12s because they were on clearance. PRX. Hey, I believe you do what I'm looking for. They don't. I'm looking for a single 18 and a dual 18. SRX. They do it. Yes. Scrolling through. So they've got their single 18, dual 18. You look at the single 18 specifications. 135. Dual 18 specifications. Hey, it's a 6 dB difference, right? We doubled the sound source. In order to do that, we have to double our power. That is the other way you can gain 3 decibels, is doubling your power into a speaker. But you get 3 dBs for free if you double your sound source and you couple them. So, yeah. So for you DJs out there, don't be afraid to space your subwoofers a little bit. 6 feet or so is fine, and that's from cone to cone. So if you have a 6-foot table, careful. It probably isn't going to do anything too massive, but I do believe once you start getting around that range, you start to lose that extra 3 dB gain from 3 dB of gain from the coupling. You run into more and more power alley issues the further apart you go. So if you can keep your subs closer, it will generally sound better. I have a 4-foot table. When I use column arrays or subwoofers, and if I have 2 of them, for aesthetic purposes, I tend to put one on each side, but then they are still coupled. You don't have to have them directly next to each other in front of you, as long as you do the measurements, do the math. You can keep that extra bit of gain if you keep them close enough. But if you're like, oh, but I gotta spread them out. your average, right? To me, the average is an important thing here, right? Going from say 127.4, and I've got a big stage at this spot. I'm gonna space these out to get more coverage. My average drops. I have more people hearing less oftentimes, especially like right now. This is looking like if I go here and I do make this thing wider, you can see here, right? You can really catch it's making more and more of those. And especially once you start doing this, ooh, right? You start just pot leafing, like it just gets obscene very quickly. Where, so average 157. If I get rid of these two, delete, average 122, bring these guys closer together, average 126. So adding those extra subwoofers, 126 right now. We had an average of 126 with 4 subs. So we've doubled our sound source, and all we've done is nothing. That's a whole lot more stuff to carry, a whole lot more just everything, and we're actually making things worse. Because, yeah, we have a few spots that are going to be louder, but average plus standard deviation. Yeah. Stick to, if you're using 2 subwoofers or more, keep them nice and close. You can if you're running a big event, right? So we've got 120 to 132 here. Add sound. Oop, no, paste is what I want. I keep these close. Right? You can see the alleying still happening a little bit, which means I need to move these a little closer together. Get them all coupled up. Make a nice array across the front. You'll see this at festivals where they'll have like a whole bunch of subwoofers spaced very particularly across the front. Wha-bam. Look at that nice ring. Look at that nice ring. And our average has gone up. Our minimum and maxes have both, right? It's just better. So, yeah, if you're a beginner sound tech, or if you're a beginner DJ, or even if you're an advanced DJ, right, spacing your subs does not work as well as you think. Long story long. Yeah. That's all I wanted to say today. Well, I'm probably going to do that again a different time and pre-record it a bit better. But I just kind of wanted to test the waters on it to see if people are interested in this kind of stuff. And, started with that video early on. And, yeah, I'm aiming to do live stream stuff about once a week, maybe an hour or so like I did today, just to keep the algorithm happy in some respects of like, hey, I'm doing a video a week, look at that. But there will be more edited videos coming out from time to time still. I've got a few on my phone that are just quick and dirty. Hey, I got this cool accessory in. Hey, check out these speaker stands, right? Stuff I don't really want to do like a big edit job on. But yeah, I'm going to finish this coffee, watch some YouTube videos myself, and then I'm going to go to work. So I'll catch you all next time.